Okay, so what I did is I took phase one, the hypertrophy phase, and I made it into weeks 1 and 2. Phase two, I made it into weeks 3 and 4. And I took phase three and I took it into weeks 5 and 6. So for the hypertrophy phase, what I did right here is I made this table in Excel um, just to show all the exercises that I've done. Now, as I stated before, during the hypertrophy phase, we're going to focus on body weight and resistant bands. And this is just so I can assess the client to make sure that they can handle the resistance program that we're about to get into. Because this is really the like assessment phase, if you will. And then once we move on to the third week into strength phase, then we can focus more on getting the client more dumbbells. And because here I do have dumbbells, but I'm focusing more on plyometric type exercises and just using body weight and resistance bands. So I incorporated doing push-ups with knee support tapering, because the reason I did that is because the client isn't accustomed to doing resistance training, so they may have to use knee support. But that's with any of these exercises. Really, they may need extra assistance. So we're going to do the push-ups, shoulder press with resistance band, and we're just going to keep that bilateral. So they're just going to do it with both arms, and then reverse dips just on the bars. Just have them do some reverse dips. And for the reverse dips, they may have to use a little assistance from myself, holding their legs, so that way they're able to perform the exercise, or have like a step ladder or something there so they can use a little bit of support, but continuing, but making sure they continue to actually perform the contractions efficiently. The For Wednesday, this is when so on Monday we're gonna focus only on upper body. Wednesday we're gonna focus on lower body. So during the lower body stage, we're gonna do just a traditional squat with no weights, calf raise with no weights. We're gonna do box jumps. This is gonna be more aerobic. So this is where in the V-ups for the abdominal training, that's also going to be more aerobic in style. So during this time, they're definitely going to put up a little bit of sweat. Now on Friday, this is actually a multi joint exercise, doing a lat, or no, sorry, this is still a single joint because it's only in the shoulders. They're going to do a lat push down with the bands, um, dumbbell deadlifts, unilateral bicep curls, and then upright row with the band. Bicep curls will be done with the band too, and I'm just going to focus on having them do it unilaterally with one arm each time as they're going. That way I can make sure that their form is correct. Now moving on to week 2, going to do some burpees because that's still going to concentrate on the chest, but we're still going to get up a little bit of aerobic training, and it's a more plyometric exercise, so I can still assess what their performance is as they went through week 1. Then we're going to do a superset just to see how they can handle it, but that's going to be done with bands, so it's not going to be that big of a deal, but it's going to be front and lateral raises. Then we're going to move on to the tricep push downs with a band as well. Then on Wednesday, lower body, we're going to focus on wide squats. That way they can get the adductors going. Calf raises, we're going to move on to dumbbells, because once they've done their week 1 with calf raises, we can pretty much move on to dumbbells, and then the calves should be recovered by that time. We'll continue with the box jumps just to get up a little bit of aerobic training, and then just have them hang on a pull-up bar and just do leg lifts for abdominals. So this day they'll definitely get a little bit of aerobic training out of that, and definitely on the burpees. The burpees are a little bit difficult to do, and it might have to be cut down to 10, maybe 8 repetitions for that one. On Friday, go back to the upper body, and we're going to do the row with the band, and that can be done on door easily. And that will just be focusing on their lats. We'll do the dumbbell deadlifts, once again, and then unilateral hammer curls. We'll move on to hammer curls and then do shrugs, so that way they do a little bit of concentration on their traps as well. Moving on to the strength phase, we're going to start in the strength phase. This is where we're going to transition into the dumbbells, like using more dumbbells for almost every single exercise, except for like the crunch, for instance. For the crunch, they're just going to do crunch and lying leg raises. We're not going to use any weight for that. So we're going to start off with the bench press, and this is when we're going to start moving on to multi-joint exercises. So for the bench press, I'll show later on, you're moving the shoulder joint and the elbow joint. Then we're going to move on to chest flies. So we're doing 2 chest exercises. That way we're really concentrating more on strength and focusing, targeting on more muscle group, or on the same muscle group. Then we're going to move on to lateral raises, front raises, and then seated tricep extensions. And these are all going to be using dumbbells. On Wednesday, it's going to be a squat and lift. We're going to use dumbbells for that as well. Then we're going to move on to the forward lunge with dumbbells, calf raise with dumbbells, and then crunch just with body weight, just with body weight. Then Friday, we're going to move on to lower body again. It's going to be chin ups, and that's just going to be with body weight. We're not going to put any extra weight on them because that would even be difficult for me to do. You have to definitely train up for that. We're going to move on to bent leg deadlifts, which isn't too difficult of an exercise, and then bilateral bicep curls. During this time, they're going to do bilateral hammer curls as well, and then shrugs. Now, during the bilateral stages, I'm trying to move to a more advanced stage where they're trying to support their lumbar area, their torso, while also creating the correct form. So even though we're increasing the intensity at this stage, we also want to make sure that they're able to handle that weight. If they can't handle the weight, then we will definitely decrease the intensity. Now, moving on to week 4, bench press again, chest flies. We're going to move on to a bilateral shoulder press, which is a multi-joint exercise as well, with dumbbells just seated, and then to a tricep extension laying down, and we're just mixing it up from the other tricep, one seated, one laying down. That way they're not doing the same monotonous exercise each week. For Wednesday, we're going to move it to the sissy squat, because the sissy squat really concentrates on the glutes and the quads. And then we're going to move to the wide squat, and that way they are focusing on the adductor muscles. Then we're going to move on to the seated leg curl and the seated calf raise, and then the lying leg raises. That's for the abdominals, but notice I put in much more, 3 exercises here for the legs. We're really going to concentrate on targeting those leg muscles. Now we're really getting into the heart of resistance training. That way they can see if it's too difficult for them, if they can handle the performance level. On Friday, we're going to do pull-ups. For pull-ups, they're just going to change their hand position. That way, with chin-ups, they're going to have the back of their hands facing themselves, and then during the pull-ups, they're going to have their palms facing themselves. So it's just moving from pronation to supination hand position, and it's just going to work out different muscle groups in the forearms, and biceps, triceps, targeting different muscle groups. And then we're going to move on to the clean and jerk, and making a more advanced exercise for them. Moving on to week 4, so they can do, and this isn't going to be only exercising their back. It's also going to help their legs, and it's setting them up for more dynamic movements for week 5 and 6. Then we're going to still concentrate on bilateral movements, and then conduct the upright row. I won't be doing the upright rows ever with a bar, because there is some tension that can happen within the wrist, so I'll make sure that's with cables or dumbbells. Cables preferred. I think that puts less pressure on the wrist. During the power phase for the final 2 weeks, We're going to move on to the bench press, still messing with it, dumbbells, um, incline chest press. Going to do another position for the chest, and then as you see, as we move on to week 6, it will be the bench press, but then we're going to move into the other position, which will be the decline chest press. And then on the week 6, we're also going to move into a third chest exercise, which will be the cable chest crossovers, which will really help target the inside of the chest, where it's more towards the medial of the body. Then lateral raises, front raises on both weeks, and then we're going to do the tricep push downs with cables. I really enjoy the cables. I think they work well, and then just standing tricep extensions on the second week. And then for the lower body weeks, we're going to work on leg extensions, seated leg curls, and that's because leg extensions are going to focus on the quads, the leg curls are going to focus on their hamstrings, and then we're still going to make sure that we get these calf raises. Now I might do seated calf raises on both weeks, and that's the only reason is because when they're seated, they can handle that weight just as long as that weight isn't directly on top of their kneecap. And then we're going to do crunches with and lying leg raise superset, and then a crunch and side crunch superset. Reason I'm doing the superset because we weren't really concentrating too hard on the abdominals on the other weeks, and we're just going to really focus them out on the last 2 weeks. Then on Friday, on the last days for both weeks, we're going to focus on doing the rows with a bench support, keeping with the dumbbells, and then a seated row. So we're doing 2 back workouts there, or actually 3 because we're going to have the deadlifts, but that's going to be with the lower back. And then we're focusing on the lats with the rows. Then we're going to move on to unilateral biceps again and unilateral hammer curls. The reasons I did this is because we're in the power phase and we're really increasing the weight, so I want to make sure they handle it. And then in the last week, we are going to do the bilateral, so they should be able to handle it by that point. So in this, on week 5, we're assessing how they can do the bicep curls, and then on week 6, we know they can handle a certain amount of weight, and we're going to have them do that bilaterally while still maintaining good form. Okay, 3 concepts here is the different types of contractions, which are isometric, concentric, and eccentric. Concentric contractions are when you shorten the muscle fibers during a workload on the muscle group, and then eccentric is whenever the muscles lengthen. So like placing down objects, for instance, or like controlling an object whenever it falls. Isometric contractions, on the other hand, is like pushing against the object, like a wall, for instance. You're pushing against the wall is almost near impossible for you to move because of the studs and the foundation and all that, but you're still contracting your muscles, you're still putting force towards that wall. However, you're not moving. The muscles are not lengthening or shortening. And these contractions can be used in different ways, and as I put here, as we can see here, the starting position, really they're in an eccentric contraction with the biceps, so we're focusing right here on the biceps. Now as the trainer starts to contract into an elbow flexion, the weight goes up, but the bicep shortens, as can be seen here in the photo. And then whenever they go into eccentric contraction, as they bring the weight back down, the bicep lengthens. And this is important because most training is done through concentric contractions. However, that's known as the positive phase, and then you have the rest phase where they hold it here and then they bring it back down to the negative phase, which is known as the eccentric contraction. Now the reason this is important because eccentric contractions, also known as negatives, can be used to limit the occurrence of DOMs, which it's been shown to do, and it can be used in untrained individuals like the clients that I'm going to be using to submaximal ranges, about 50% of their one rep max. So that'd be really great for especially the week 1 and week 2. And if they have problems with the exercise,